A dying CEO's last breath depends on a humble cleaner's secret power, but as love blooms against all odds, dark betrayals and painful family wounds threaten to tear them apart forever. But then, she was his only antidote. Please subscribe to my channel, like, share, and comment on the country where you are watching from if you found the story interesting. Dagmar was a young, powerful CEO beyond imagination. People didn't just call him Dagmar, they called him King Dagmar because his late father had once ruled as a king. After his father's death, the palace was now managed by Dagmar's mother, his loyal bodyguard, and his sharp personal assistant. But despite all the money and power, Dagmar was dying. He had a strange illness no doctor could cure. He knew he didn't have long to live. One morning, dressed in his usual sleek black suit, Dagmar stepped out with his bodyguard and personal assistant. They were on their way to an important business meeting when their car slowed down on a federal road. There, sweeping the roadside with an old broom, was a young cleaner named Kinky. She was focused, sweating under the morning sun. Her small bicycle was parked at the side of the road, but it accidentally blocked the path. Annoyed, Dagmar's bodyguards jumped out of the vehicle and stormed toward the bicycle. One of them was already raising his foot to kick it when Kinky rushed forward, shouting angrily, "Don't touch my bicycle!" The confrontation got heated. Just then, Dagmar stepped out of the car. His presence alone brought instant silence. "Step back," he said firmly to his guards. They obeyed without question. Dagmar walked toward Kinky, reached into his pocket, and pulled out a sleek black card. He stretched it out toward her. But Kinky looked at the card, confused and wary. "What's this?" she asked, not moving an inch. Dagmar looked her straight in the eyes. "Take it. I'm dying soon. I have an illness no one can cure." Those words stirred something in Kinky. She hesitated, not because of fear but because deep down she knew something she'd always kept to herself. Kinky had a rare gift, a secret magical ability to heal. She had never used it on anyone since she left her family, but now something inside her whispered, "This is the moment." She slowly reached out and took the black card. Dagmar gave her one more look. "Come with us." But Kinky shook her head. "I'll follow," she said quietly, mounting her bicycle instead. As the car drove off, she pedaled behind them, the wind brushing her face, her heart beating fast. Kinky came from a wealthy home too, but she had abandoned it all. Her father, once a loving man, had humiliated her mother by marrying his mistress. Her mother walked out of the marriage with tears in her eyes and dignity in her steps. Kinky followed soon after, choosing struggle and honesty over luxury and pain. Back at Dagmar's palace, the air was thick with panic. Before Kinky could arrive, Dagmar had already passed out on his bed. His skin was pale, his breath shallow. 3 doctors stood around him. Not ordinary doctors, but legendary ones. The fairy doctor, known for using herbs from enchanted forests. The god doctor, said to speak the language of spirits. And the fortune doctor, who could see into the future, but not change it. His mother, standing nearby with trembling hands, looked at the unconscious form of her only son. Her voice was desperate, trembling with hope and fear. "Whoever brings my son back to life," she said, "I promise he will marry her." Kinky stood quietly in a corner of the room, watching the 3 doctors try to bring Dagmar back to life. The first doctor tried, but could not find a pulse. The second doctor tried as well, but the same thing happened. The third doctor also failed to find his pulse. The room grew very silent. The doctors looked defeated and fell to their knees in despair. Suddenly, Kinky shouted from behind, "I will bring him back to life." Dagmar's mother turned to look at her like she was nobody important. The 3 doctors began to mock Kinky because she was just wearing her cleaner's uniform. Kinky felt angry and started to walk out of the palace. At that moment, Dagmar's personal assistant quickly knelt before her and said, "Dagmar is a good person. Please, if you can, bring him back. I'm sorry for what they said to you." Hearing this, Kinky returned and went straight to where Dagmar was lying. She opened her wallet, took out a small pin, and gently punctured Dagmar's head with it. Dagmar screamed in pain and held his head. The 3 doctors shouted angrily, "Now you have finally killed him." Kinky stepped aside and told them to check his pulse again. This time, They checked and, to their surprise, Dagmar's pulse was back. They stared at Kinky in shock. Meanwhile, Dagmar's mother threatened Kinky, saying she would kill her if anything happened to her son because of that puncture. A few minutes later, Dagmar sat up from the bed. He looked strong and healthy, no longer pale. He could speak clearly and did not feel the strange weakness he had before. The three doctors left the palace in shame. Kinky asked them to give Dagmar some water to drink. Then she looked straight into Dagmar's mother's eyes and said, "Do you still remember your promise? Make sure you keep it." Without a word, Dagmar's mother smiled and left the palace. Dagmar followed Kinky outside, begging her to let him drop her off. She refused. She mounted her bicycle and rode away. Back in the palace, Dagmar's mother was stunned and ungrateful. She did not even say thank you to Kinky, only seeing her as a simple cleaner. What she did not know was that Kinky was from another wealthy family, but with her own story and strength. One morning, Kinky was busy doing her usual cleaning work under the scorching sun. Suddenly, a young man named Nathan, Kinky's boyfriend, appeared. He told Kinky that he could no longer marry her because of how people looked at her and her cleaning job. He was ashamed to be called the husband of a common road sweeper. Because of this, Nathan wanted to call off their engagement. But the real reason Nathan was acting this way was because of Kinky's father's property. Nathan wanted to claim a share of it. Since Kinky had refused to go back home and reconcile with her father, Nathan felt he had lost everything. He knew Kinky's father would not leave anything to her. So Nathan turned his attention to Kinky's younger sister, Judith, daughter Kinky's father had with his mistress outside of marriage. Nathan offered Kinky $5 million to cancel the engagement, but Kinky refused. She said, "We are getting married." Nathan left angrily and went on to plan a wedding with Judy instead. Judy asked Nathan, "How are you going to handle Kinky? She might cause chaos." But Nathan's answer shocked Judy. He said, "Since she refused to accept $5 million to cancel the marriage proposal, I will disgrace her and make a mess of her on that wedding day." A few weeks later, Kinky's mother came to visit her at her workplace. She saw her daughter working hard under the hot sun. She held Kinky and said, "I know you left your father's house to do this job because of the pain he caused me. But I have forgiven him. Please go back home and make peace with your father." Kinky replied, "Until he apologizes to you, Mother, I will never go back to that house." End of chapter. 2 days later, Kinky's mother called her with serious news her father was very sick. The next day, Kinky agreed to follow her mother back to the house to check on him. It had been a long time since she stepped foot in that place. As they walked in, Kinky was surprised to see her ex-fiancé, Nathan, sitting comfortably next to her younger sister, Judy. Kinky ignored them and went straight to her father's side, who looked weak and pale on the couch. Suddenly, one of the maids rushed into the room holding a phone in her hand. "Madam, sir, everyone! See this news!" She turned the screen toward them, showing a trending headline. "CEO cured by a common cleaner, turns out she's his only antidote." Everyone gasped. Immediately, someone turned on the television. The same news was playing videos of the moment Kinky healed Dagmar, now identified as the mysterious cleaner with a healing gift. The whole room went silent. Then, slowly, one by one, their heads turned toward Kinky in shock. Even Nathan looked stunned. Judy couldn't hide her surprise. Kinky's father, now desperate, looked up at her with pleading eyes. "Kinky," he said weakly, "please, help me." Kinky's mother stepped forward, her voice soft but firm. "Please, my daughter. If you can heal him, do it." Kinky turned and looked into her mother's eyes filled with tears and love. Then she looked down at her father and said clearly, "I have the power to heal you. But before I do, I need you to kneel and apologize to my mother, the woman who stood by you when you had nothing. If you can't do that, then with all respect, let me take my leave." The room was frozen, but her father's pride held him back. He remained silent. He did not kneel. He did not say a word. Kinky watched him for a moment longer, then slowly turned around and walked out of the room. Without another word, she returned to her apartment. Now it was 2 weeks until Nathan's wedding. Preparations were in full swing. Kinky had other plans, She no longer wanted to marry Nathan since he was now with her younger sister, Judy. But she did want to cause trouble on their wedding day away to pay Nathan back for the shame he had brought upon her. To her, Nathan was a worthless man. 7 days before the wedding, the CEO came looking for Kinky at her usual workplace. He found her sweeping the floor. "Kinky," he said gently, "please, can we go somewhere? I need to talk to you about something very important." Kinky was almost done for the day. She told him, "Wait for me here. Let me go home and freshen up." A few minutes later, Kinky came out wearing a beautiful red gown that showed off her feminine grace. When the CEO saw her, he was stunned. He had never imagined Kinky could be so beautiful. Kinky stepped in front of him and said, "You said you wanted to talk. Let's go." They drove together to Dagmar's palace. When they arrived, the CEO's mother was sitting just outside the palace, enjoying some fresh air. As soon as she saw her son's car pull in, she stood up to see the woman he had brought home to marry. They stepped out of the car. The mother came closer, but she did not recognize Kinky as the simple cleaner who had healed her son. She asked Dagmar, "Is this the woman you plan to marry, son? She looks so beautiful, elegant, and classy." Dagmar smiled and said, "Yes, Mother. She is the cleaner who cured me." At once, the mother's expression changed. Kinky stepped forward and said clearly, "I hope you still remember your promise. You said your son would marry whoever cured him." She smiled and then walked inside. Meanwhile, Nathan had no idea his mother had made such a promise. He was deeply in love with Kinky and was eagerly waiting for her to say yes. When they got inside the palace, the CEO reached into his pocket and pulled out a sparkling diamond ring. He knelt before Kinky and said jokingly, "My antidote. Will you marry me? I want to spend the rest of my life by your side." A warm smile spread across Kinky's face. She looked straight into his eyes and said, "Yes, I will marry you, my humble CEO." Dagmar slipped the ring onto her finger, and the wedding preparations began. The date was set, and everything else was put in order. On her way home, Kinky's phone buzzed. It was her father calling. His illness was getting worse every day, and now he felt he might not survive. He wanted to call his eldest daughter, Kinky, so he could divide his property among his children before he died. When Kinky arrived at her family house, she found Nathan sitting with her younger sister, Judy. The lawyer was there too, along with Kinky's mother and her father's mistress. Nathan, greedy and full of hopes, believed that the largest part of the property would go to Judy, since Kinky was not on good terms with their father. A few minutes later, the lawyer began to read the will. To everyone's shock, the majority of her father's property was left to Kinky and her mother. Kinky looked at her mother, a tiny smile on her lips and a knowing wink in her eye. She walked over and hugged her mother warmly. Her father's mistress and Judy left the room in anger without saying a word. As Kinky's father coughed and seemed about to collapse, Kinky rushed to his side. She took a small pin from her bag and gently punctured his head twice. Within minutes, her father regained strength. He looked at Kinky's mother, knelt down before her, and apologized. He begged her to come back home. Nathan was now completely confused. This wedding must not happen, he thought. I'm no longer sure about the fortune. A few days before the wedding, Kinky decided to visit Nathan at his apartment. She wanted to personally invite him to her wedding. When she arrived, she overheard Nathan and her younger sister Judy arguing heatedly. Nathan was angry and frustrated, insisting that the wedding could no longer happen. What Nathan didn't realize was that Judy and her mother were very dangerous people ready to do anything to protect their interests. As soon as Judy saw Kinky, she quickly left the room, disappearing without a word. Kinky stepped forward and faced Nathan. "You greedy fool," she said coldly. "Is that why you don't want to marry my younger sister anymore? Because the fortune didn't come her way? Well, that's your problem." She reached into her bag and pulled out a beautifully designed invitation card. "I brought this for you. Make sure you come. Have a nice day." Without waiting for a response, Kinky turned and walked away. Nathan was left standing there, stunned and unsure of what to do next. The days leading up to the wedding were tense. Whispers of sabotage floated through the city streets, and shadows seemed to move where no one should be. One evening, as Kinky prepared for bed, a soft knock came at her door. Opening it, she found a mysterious envelope slipped through the crack. Inside was a single note. "Beware the ones closest to you. Their smiles hide knives." Chills ran down Kinky's spine. Meanwhile, Nathan grew restless. That same night, he received another message, this time a photo-on image of Judy speaking secretly with a shadowy figure in a dimly lit room. Confused and afraid, Nathan realized that the battle for fortune and love was more dangerous than he ever imagined. The question now was, who would strike first? Days passed with a heavy weight hanging over everyone. Kinky grew more cautious. She confided in Dagmar, telling him about the strange notes and the dangerous threats surrounding their wedding. Dagmar promised to protect her no matter what. Nathan, on the other hand, was caught between fear and anger. Judy and her mother pressured him harder than ever. They demanded he do something terrible, eliminate Kinky to secure their claim on the fortune. But Nathan's heart was torn. Despite everything, a part of him still cared for Kinky. One evening, Judy confronted Nathan angrily. "If you don't do this, everything we planned will be destroyed. You will lose everything, and so will I." Nathan refused. That night, shadows moved again. Unbeknownst to Nathan, Judy and her mother had already made their move, setting a trap that would change everything. Days passed with a heavy weight hanging over everyone. The once calm air around Kinky and Dagmar now felt thick with danger and uncertainty. Kinky had grown more cautious. She noticed strange faces watching her at her workplace and even subtle threats whispered behind closed doors. One evening, as she sat with Dagmar in the palace garden, she shared her fears. "Dagmar," she said quietly, "there are people who want to stop our wedding. I have received notes warning me, and I don't know how far they will go." Dagmar took her hands in his eyes fierce with determination. "Whatever comes," he promised, "I will protect you. No one will harm you or stop us." But the shadow of threat loomed large. Meanwhile, Nathan was in turmoil. Every day, Judy and her mother tightened their grip on him, their words like chains around his heart and mind. "Do what we say, Nathan," Judy whispered fiercely one night in the dim light of their shared room. "Kill Kinky. End this before it's too late. If you don't, we'll both lose everything." Nathan's heart ached. He looked at Judy as fiancée in name, but a stranger in spirit. The love he once felt was buried beneath greed and fear. "No," he said, voice shaking but firm. "I can't do it. She's the only good thing left in my life. I won't hurt her." Judy's eyes flashed with rage. "You're a fool if you think you have a choice. You will lose more than fortune if you disobey." But Nathan's mind was made. That night, unknown to Nathan, Judy and her mother had already begun weaving a deadly plan. They met with dark figures in secret, arranging traps and setting in motion a plan that would leave no room for mercy. At the same time, Kinky prepared for the wedding day with a mixture of excitement and dread. Invitations were sent, the palace adorned with flowers and lights, and the city buzzing with anticipation. Yet, every time she closed her eyes, the warning from the mysterious notes echoed, "Beware the ones closest to you. Their smiles hide knives." The day before the wedding, Nathan received another chilling message, a photo of Kinky standing with Dagmar, smiling under the bright sun. But behind her smile was a shadow he couldn't shake. The message read, "She's closer to power than you think. Watch your back." Nathan's hands trembled. The world he thought he knew was crumbling. Meanwhile, Judy and her mother grew impatient. "We will strike soon," Judy said coldly. "We must ensure Nathan follows through, or else we do it ourselves." But Nathan was determined to defy them. On the wedding day, the palace was alive with celebration. Guests arrived in lavish gowns and sharp suits, laughter and music filling the air. Dagmar waited nervously at the altar, his heart racing as he saw Kinky enter radiant in a stunning white dress, her eyes sparkling with love and courage. But hidden beneath the joy was a storm ready to break. In the shadows, Judy and her mother watched, their faces masks of hatred. As the ceremony began, a sudden commotion erupted at the palace gates. Shots rang out. Chaos exploded. Nathan, caught in the middle of the violent attack, refused to harm Kinky. In a desperate move, Judy and her mother turned their guns on him. He fell to the ground, bleeding. his last thoughts a mix of regret and helplessness. The palace guards quickly arrested Judy and her mother, dragging them away as their plans collapsed. Amid the chaos, Dagmar and Kinky's love shone brighter than ever. Despite the darkness around them, their wedding went on a beautiful, lavish celebration of hope and new beginnings. Their story was one of healing, courage, and the triumph of love over betrayal. Closing scene. The sun was setting over the palace gardens as Dagmar and Kinky stood hand in hand, surrounded by friends, family, and well-wishers. The earlier chaos had settled, and peace returned like a gentle breeze. Dagmar looked into Kinky's eyes and smiled. "You are my true antidote, not just to my illness, but to every pain I've ever known." Kinky's eyes shimmered with tears of joy. "And you are my strength, my hope, and my home." As the guests applauded, they shared their first kiss as husband and wife, a symbol of love conquering darkness. The music swelled, laughter returned, and the night sparkled with endless possibilities. Together, they would build a future filled with healing, trust, and happiness. Epilogue. Months later, Judy and her mother remained behind bars, facing justice for their crimes. Nathan recovered from his injuries but chose a quiet life far from the palace, reflecting on his choices and seeking redemption. Dagmar and Kinky flourished in their marriage. Beyond the grand celebrations, they dedicated themselves to helping others, using Kinky's healing gift and Dagmar's influence to uplift their community. Their story became one of hope, whispered across the city, a reminder that true power lies in love, forgiveness, and the courage to heal. And no matter the storms they faced, Dagmar and Kinky knew they would always stand together, stronger than ever. The end.